Hi, it's Angela here, and welcome to the Thriving in Menopause series. I put this series of videos together because I believe there is a different way for women to do menopause. It doesn't have to be a time of physical discomfort, lots of symptoms and emotions that are just going absolutely crazy. There is another way. And the reason why I know there's another way is because I've actually managed to find another way. And many women I work with, they've also found another way. When I first started working in this space and I started to treat women with menopause, I started to look around because I wondered why were so many women within the Western world experiencing all of these symptoms when I'd heard that women in places like Asia didn't experience the type of symptoms that we did. And that led me a little bit of a journey, to a little bit of research, and I realized that different cultures experience menopause in different ways. Now I'm going to share with you in this next 5 days of videos the reason why this is and some of the things that you can do that can make a massive difference in the way you experience menopause. My aim is for you to thrive all the way through this stage of your life and to live the best life you possibly can. So enjoy all of these videos and let me know what you think. I'd really love to hear from you. Bye for now. For those of you who don't know me, I just thought I'd do a really quick introduction to who I am and why I am doing this. So my background is that I'm a qualified naturopath. I was in clinical practice for 13 years. I qualified about 15 years ago. I haven't actually been in clinical practice for the last couple of years, but because I switched more over into health coaching. So now I do health coaching. I'm also certified in a form of kinesiology called Lifeline Technique, where we get to understand the underlying, the beliefs and the emotions that are causing the physical symptoms that are expressing in your body. But yeah, I'm trained in NLP as well. So I do a lot of different things, but my main focus now is to help women through this stage of menopause, because for many women, as I speak to them, they're struggling and they're actually feeling like there's no one they can talk to. And I want to demystify menopause, and we'll go into a little bit more about what menopause is in a minute. But my aim now is to show women how they can actually transition through this next stage of life with minimal symptoms and to really step into their wise woman, because this is the stage where we kind of get to a time in life where we really don't worry too much about what other people think, but this is when our wisdom comes out and it's time to embrace that. And this is what I call the Marga stage. So Marga means wise woman in Sicilian. So my business, or what I do, my project is called the Marga Woman Project. I have a magazine called the Marga Woman Magazine. I have a YouTube channel called the Marga Woman TV, and I'm about to launch my podcast, which will be Marga Woman Radio. So it's all about stepping into the wise woman that we are when we come into this stage of life. Over the next 5 days, I'm going to share with you the best information that I've got and how you can really embrace this time of your life. I'm also, for those of you who are interested, going to share with you a little bit about a new program that I'm launching called the Embrace program. So I'll mention that a little bit as we go along, but this is not a sales pitch. It is really to share information with you. So I want to start with, let's define what menopause is, because there are, when I'm actually using the word menopause, there are actually different words. So menopause in essence is a time, it's just a time when after 12 months of no cycle, you're deemed to be in menopause. So if you had no cycle for 12 months, no period for 12 months, it is said that you are now in menopause. So menopause is just kind of like a line in the sand. Prior to that, you're in perimenopause. And this is when lots of women experience all different symptoms as their hormones shift. After that line in the sand, you're now in postmenopause. But the general term around all of it is menopause. And menopause for women can last, it can last 12 months, it can last many years. Some women continue to experience symptoms for 10 to 13 years, but I don't want that to be you, because you don't have to experience that at all. You can really, and I'm going to share with you what causes a lot of these symptoms as we go over the next couple of days, so that you can understand that. So I'm going to just use the word menopause, but generally we're talking perimenopause, postmenopause, but let's just stay with menopause because that's what people understand. Now, many of the common symptoms that come up for women, and the ones that women know the most of, are hot flushing, night sweats, insomnia, issues losing weight, and there can also be vaginal dryness, dry skin, muscle aches and pains. A lot of these types of symptoms are associated with menopause, and they're called menopause symptoms, but in essence they're not necessarily menopause symptoms, and I'll share with you why in a couple of minutes. So I just want to talk to you a little bit. I've got a few notes here. I just want to make sure that I cover everything off. Which hormones that we're actually going to be, which impact us. So we've got the one most people know about, estrogen, but there's other hormones that are changing at this stage of life: progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and insulin. So the first hormone that starts to shift is actually progesterone. So progesterone is produced in the second half of every cycle, once the ovary releases an egg. So the egg actually creates the progesterone to keep that egg healthy, and should it result in a pregnancy, well, then progesterone continues to produce because it supports the embryo in the first 3 months of after conception, and then after that it'll start to drop down, and then the other pregnancy hormones take place. But with as you release less eggs, because you've got less supply, your progesterone levels start to come down. So progesterone is our feel-good hormone. It's the hormone that in the second half of your cycle has you feeling good. It's the hormone that in the first 3 months of being pregnant you feel really excited. And as progesterone starts to come down, you can start to feel a little bit anxious. This is when depression can come up. Your moods can be up and down. So this is generally a result of progesterone. The next hormone that starts to drop after that is testosterone. Now, testosterone is our get up and go hormone. Now, testosterone obviously we know is a male hormone, but as females we have it too. And when our testosterone levels start to come down, we can start to lose motivation, we can start to lose our passion, our zest, our get up and go. And for some women who have been really very driven, they can start all of a sudden feeling like they don't know where they're going because that drive's gone, because their testosterone has started to drop. Then after that, the estrogen starts to come down. So as you can see, estrogen isn't the first hormone that starts to come down. We've got other hormones that come down after that. And then once estrogen comes down, now estrogen is responsible for many different functions within the body. It's actually an anti-inflammatory, so you can start to experience pain and aches in the joints. So you get a little bit more achy, which people put down to old age, but that's generally the estrogen levels coming down. Lots of other things will start to happen. The regulation of our body heat also comes from estrogen. So estrogen, as I said, is the last hormone to come down. Now, the interesting thing is that whilst our reproductive organs produce estrogen, also, and progesterone and testosterone, so do our adrenal glands. Now, ideally, when we start to have a drop in our reproductive hormones, in that our reproductive system is no longer, we're not getting regular cycles anymore, and all of, we're no longer releasing eggs, the adrenal glands actually should be releasing enough hormone so that we don't get a sudden drop in hormone. Unfortunately, Many women, by the time they get to this stage of life, are adrenally exhausted. They have burnt out because they have been raising families, running business, working in corporate. They have been doing everything to support everyone else and they haven't been supporting themselves. So they get to this stage of life and their adrenals are basically kind of going, I got nothing left. And they don't have enough left to produce these reproductive hormones, because it's more important that the body produces cortisol, because cortisol keeps us alive, whereas estrogen and progesterone doesn't necessarily keep us alive, it just keeps us feeling good. So this is why many women experience so many symptoms when it comes to menopause. It's not due to the shift in the reproductive hormones, it's due to the fact that the adrenal glands cannot keep up and cannot produce enough excess hormone to actually gently bring us into this stage of life. Because it's quite interesting is that when we go and look at some of the more traditional cultures, they don't experience menopause like we women in the Western world do. They don't have all of these symptoms. You know, some cultures don't even have a word for menopause. Their periods just stop and they go into their next stage of life. They then become the wise women of the tribe, but they don't have all the stuff that we have going on. And that's because they don't live the type of life that they're living. They're not adrenally burned out. They are not eating the foods that we're eating. They're not exposed to the toxins and the chemicals that we're exposed to. They don't have all this excess baggage that we have. And I'm going to talk about all of them this week. All of this stuff I'm going to talk about this week, because that's what's impacting the way you feel when it comes into menopause. But I want to tell you that whilst everybody's experience of menopause is different, you are not alone. The big thing that I think shocks many women is the emotional roller coaster that you go on. And if you can remember back, and I know it's probably a long time for me, it's probably a long time for all of you, but if you've had teenage daughters, you will remember this, what it was like when you very first got your period. The emotional roller coaster that you were on when you were first getting your period, or what you saw your daughters go through when they got their periods. I see it now. My daughter only just started getting her period the middle of last year, and I see the emotional roller coaster that she goes on. You're going through the same emotional roller coaster, because you've actually got the opposite end of the hormones, where she has them coming up and they're trying to balance themselves out. You've got them going down and they're trying to balance themselves up. So the difference is you've got so much more baggage. You've lived so much more, and for many women, they've got wounds. They've got wounds from being a woman. If you grew up in the same era that I did. I'm 56, so I know that women on this call are probably within a 10-year radius of that. So you grew up in the same world that I grew up, where women were fighting for their rights, but we really didn't get them. That I would say that now the Me Too movement has come out, that nearly every single woman at this stage of life has experienced some type of sexual contact that they didn't invite, but we accepted that was just the way it was, and we just had to be there because we were women and there was nothing we could do about it. But these are wounds, these are deep wounds, and we hold these wounds within us. And then when we get to this stage of life, starts to expresses itself in anger, in fear, in all of this stuff, and we don't understand what's going on. We don't understand why we sometimes feel like that if one person came near us, we're going to kill them. That's part of all of the stuff that you've been dealing with over the last 30 odd years, and it's now actually started to come out. And if you don't address it, if you don't heal those wounds, if you don't deal with those emotions, they're going to continue to come up for the rest of your life, and they will express themselves physically. There is a very strong connection between our emotions and our physical health. And when I first became a naturopath, I didn't get this. I didn't understand that connection. It's not until I did a lot more study and realized what was going on, and got into kinesiology and realize that the emotional wounds that we're holding expresses in our physical body. So when we're expressing physical symptoms of menopause, we've got to be looking at more than just the hormones. I'm going to be talking more about that this week. Yes, there is a shift in hormones, but why are we experiencing this when other women aren't? Because, there's women in the world that don't experience this, but with the Western world, we're experiencing it a lot. And the reason is because of, as I said, our diet, our stress, our emotions, our environment. All of this comes to expressing these symptoms. And I know that when we address these, that your symptoms will go. 2 years ago, I was getting hot flushes all of the time. Struggled to sleep. I still have issues to sleep every so often, but I know why. And I'm going to share that with you. And I'm still working on some of the aches and pains. So I've still got a little bit of aches and pains, and I've got a few issues going on. But I know what triggers them. I know what makes it worse, and I know how to actually get rid of those symptoms. So that's what I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you stuff that I never ever learned as a naturopath, because when I studied to be a naturopath, they only taught me how to deal with hot flushes, because that's all anyone ever spoke about. But I now know that there's so much more, and I've learned, and I've gone and I've learned from other sources, and I know what it takes to actually live a vital life, to thrive in menopause, not to kind of just barely survive. So that's what the next 5 days is about. I've spoken to you about hormones. The other two hormones that we will be looking at is insulin and also the thyroid hormones, because they also impact the way you're feeling at the moment. So we've got 6 hormones that are playing at the moment around what's going on in your body. So we need to really be really clear on what's going on with that. But when it comes down to it, it's still all the same things that resolve all of these issues. So there's actually a little workbook that I have put in there, and there's something for you to do every single day. So if you go in there, download that. What I've put in there for you today is I want you to really explore what menopause, what aging means to you, because you will have belief systems that have been ingrained in your subconscious that came from your mother, came from your great-grandmother, from your grandmother, from your great-grandmother, from the women around you as you were growing up, particularly when you were younger. I want you to really explore what that meant to you. What did your mother, what did your grandmother teach you about this stage of life? What did they teach you about aging? Because if we really look at it, your grandmother, when you were 5, is probably round about the same age as you are now. Who did your grandmother seem to be when you were 5? Did she seem to be an old lady? Because all of that stuff is in your subconscious, and we need to bring that out, because you are not aging. Aging is and I did a live on this the other day, aging has meanings around it, in that it's breaking down, it's kind of losing use and things like that. We're growing older and we're growing wiser, but we don't have to age. There is a difference. So we need to really be looking at what the mindset, what the beliefs around this are. Now, I know for me that my mother had a full hysterectomy at 24. So and that was 2 years after I was born. I didn't know my mother going through menopause, because she would have gone through menopause when I was, 2 or 3. And straight up, very shortly after she'd had a full hysterectomy. So I didn't really know what menopause was. I only knew from what I got in the outside world. My mother didn't know her mother, so I didn't have a grandmother. I didn't have all this around me. So what I've experienced is what I've learned and what society's taught me. And I know that I had a little bit of fear, but then I was also, well, maybe it's okay now that I don't have a period, because I had lots of issues with my cycle before having children, when I had fibroids and really heavy bleeding and all of that. So it was like, I get to menopause and now we can just stop that. So I didn't know what to expect, and I had to learn it. But I know that there were some belief systems sitting in there that came from society. So I want you to explore that, because when we can bring that out, then we can acknowledge where we're at. We can acknowledge that maybe you had great role models. Maybe you had mothers and grandmothers who truly thrived at this stage of life. And that's going to actually, you can then embrace that. But if you didn't have that, and you had an environment around you that told you that menopause was a time when you became a crone, when you became old and all of that, then we've got to deal with that, because that's sitting in there. So that's what I've got for you to do today. Now, feel free, if you want to, once you've done that writing, if you want to share anything that you any aha moments in the Facebook group. You know, it's a closed group. There's only women in this group. Everyone's going through the same stuff. So if you feel open enough and safe enough to do so, feel free to share that within the group. Just hashtag it, Thrive in Menopause. If you've got any questions, please ask them in the group as we go along. We learned from society, and unfortunately society is very ageist, in that particularly with women, you get to a certain age and you're written off. We see that all the time. We see that in the media. We see that in entertainment, that we've been brought up to think that young is great, and over 40 is, women over 40 are written off. They no longer count. And it's not true, and we need to reclaim that. No one speaks about menopause. We now openly speak about, being pregnant, and we celebrate that. No one is celebrating menopause. We need to celebrate it, because this is that time of life when we truly come into our wisdom. And I'm so passionate about this. I want to create a rite of passage for women so that they can celebrate getting to this stage of life. That's why I call it Marga, wise woman. Let's just really embrace all of this. Let's get it into the open and stop making it a big secret. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Let's just talk about it. I want to talk about it. No more taboo subject. I know for a while it's like, oh, can I talk about menopause on Facebook? Can I talk about this? It's like, no, let's stop making it a taboo subject. Let's talk about it. Let's get out there, talk about it, share our experiences so that women know they're not alone. So that's all I'm going to do today. Tomorrow I'm going to be looking more about stress, and we're going to talk a bit more about the hormonal balance, diet. I'll give you some ideas of the type of foods that can make things worse, lifestyle, environment. We're going to be talking about that. I'll give you some tips on what you can be doing that will actually reduce your symptoms. I'll tell you what's causing the symptoms so that you then know what it is you can do to reduce those symptoms. So thanks for joining me. Thanks. I hope you found that was useful. From my heart to yours, infinite love and gratitude. Bye.